Hey guys, hope you all are doing well. Just going to go ahead and jump right into the question on what college course I would like to teach. For me, the big thing would probably be teaching about American political theory. And by that, I mean the philosophies that sort of feed into our main political paradigms. And by that, I mean conservatism and progressivism, not Democratic Party versus Republican Party. Because America's kind of interesting in that our ideologies do not necessarily line up with party positions. I mean, it's been, with the nationalization of politics, it's been kind of getting more streamlined, but if you look at our history of our parties, both have had different sort of elements on the progressive and conservative wings. And even today, you have conservative Democrats and you have some progressive Republicans. So going into the theory and differentiating that from party politics, I think would be very helpful. Conservatism specifically and how it ties into American politics, so like looking at historical presidents such as like Lincoln and Coolidge and how that relates to the thought of the founding fathers and how sort of conservatism has developed all over time, looking probably at Russell Kirk and William Buckley, who's British, but he sort of influences modern American conservatism. It's him that sort of pushes the ideology that leads into the traditional, more modern conservatives. You think of Goldwater, Reagan, and then Coolidge is also another one where when you think of Reagan, a lot of what he says you can actually derive from Coolidge's speeches. So on conservatism, that's where I would put my focus on that wing, and on progressivism, looking kind of at sort of the origins of that philosophy and more progressive presidents such as FDR, Teddy Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, and sort of how that relates to earlier theories that they draw from, specifically Hegel, who is a German administrative philosopher, German political philosopher who sort of focused heavily on administration of government, that government needs to have this large administrative state, and so that goes into the idea of how that relates to American progressivism. I'll attach a bunch of links in the course, a bunch of links in the description to sort of get an idea of what the pieces are what these pieces are looking at. And so I mentioned all these things like Hegel and people who weren't necessarily from the U.S. And sort of were thinkers from other areas, but I say looking at that also is necessary for understanding the American political theory. So this sounds all jumbled, but essentially a political philosophy course on American political theories and how they are derived from theories outside the U.S. So you'd be looking at a lot of religious movements and a bit of Locke and little bits and smatterings of Locke and Montesquieu for conservatives, but mostly outside of the Enlightenment, because conservatism generally is a rejection of Enlightenment ideas. It's more of a critic of Enlightenment democracy in a traditional sense, but it sort of gets fed into in the American context because of the nature of its founding. And then progressivism sort of draws from a more administrative position that is based on Hegel's nationalism, well, not nationalism, but kind of along the same lines. So aside from studying American political theory, I would also be interested in teaching some sort of smaller seminars, so not so like full college courses, but like little brief, like 1 to 2 week, not even intensive, just short little crash courses. I could see myself teaching a small seminar on, say, understanding Lincoln and his political theory, and understanding his actions as president. He's a very controversial figure if you look at some of the details. For example, in 1862, he sought to send, like, if the North were to win, instead of just granting straightforward emancipation, he advocated actually and tried to encourage black leaders to take an opportunity to move blacks to a colony in the Caribbean. He doesn't specify which one, but the two areas that historians believe were in that site were either Dominican Republic or Panama. He said he had basically a colony ready for them to settle, and so that was early mid-war, before emancipation was his full push. He actually encouraged, and so it just encouraged that movement. So it's looking at Lincoln, looking at how controversial he is. At the beginning of the war, he's kind of almost borderline pro-slavery. To the end of the war, he takes this radically different position. Understanding who he is and his actions is, I think, helpful for understanding how things progress in our country, or how should or shouldn't progress depending on your position, because historians are everywhere, from completely rejecting Lincoln to embracing him entirely. So understanding who he is as a person, I think, is a really helpful short course. Another one would be also similar, on the origins of the Civil War. It's a very messy topic. It's a very timely topic because of a lot of the issues, and I'm going to do my best to stay out of the reactionary zone. But looking at the facts in history that sort of challenge our general conventional perspective, and not to like reject conventional perspectives, but just to take those things into consideration. Such as, like, say, the Corwin Amendment, which tried to advocate for enshrining slavery in the Constitution, was passed by many northern states, but not a single southern state ratified it, to Virginia's 2 different votes on secessions, one against secession before Fort Sumter and one immediately after, to Lincoln's first inaugural address, where he was supportive of the Corwin Amendment. But yeah, all those things, not to say slavery wasn't an issue, but to just bring the facts that don't often get addressed but are pretty significant. Just that way we could have a better understanding for the Civil War and how it was such a strong conflict that shook the core of this nation and why it did that. Really, a good study of that, I think, would help put into context sort of how a lot of our arguments, although some come to the same philosophical depth, we're not even scratching the surface on how horrific we've been in defending our presuppositions. So understanding all the complexities of the Civil War. We're not going to understand all of it, but like a short course on a lot of the complexities that aren't often considered, I think, would be very helpful. And so that's another short, small thing I would be interested in teaching. So yeah, so those are the things I'd be interested in teaching, if not little controversial bits. But yeah, I look forward to seeing y'all's responses. Thank you, Aaron, for the question. I really enjoyed that one, and I look forward to hearing about what y'all have to say.